that down.
Okay.
And then when you're done, If I could ask everyone to take their seats, we'll start this hearing in just a couple moments. That was, I'll be honest, that was a lot faster than I had anticipated. Glenn's going to pop up here and then we'll get rolling. The subcommittee will come to order. Hey, good morning. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us in this field hearing for the Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity of the U.S. House of Representatives, Committee on Veterans Affairs. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first official congressional hearing that has ever taken place in the 3rd Congressional District of the state of Wisconsin. So I really want to thank you all for coming here, and there'll be more of this. I want everybody that's here to be more connected with what's taking place in D.C., and I sure as hell want everyone in D.C. to be more connected with what's taking place here. And this is a function of that, so thank you so much. I am Derek Van Orden. It's my pleasure not only to serve as your congressman, but also to serve as the chairman of the subcommittee. And I set the pace in this Congress that this is not a bipartisan committee. This is a nonpartisan committee. And I'm very proud of Ranking Member Levin and his staff for strictly adhering to this policy. And there is certainly enough garbage politically taking place around the country right now, and there's absolutely no place for politics at all when we're discussing our veterans. So thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate that greatly. I also want to thank the students, faculty, staff of the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse for being here at this field hearing. Chancellor Beebe, I don't know if you had a chance to be here, but thank you very much for having us here. David Tubb, Nate Wolf from the Veterans Center, thank you for hosting us in your space. This is a unique space around the country. You guys do an incredible job for supporting our veterans, so thank you so much for that. I also want to thank the Greater Driftless Area businesses for hosting our staff during their stay here. I believe that they've consumed their body's weight of cheese curds, which I appreciate greatly. Mike just got here because he is down in Chicago. There's something going on there. I didn't read the papers this morning. Apparently there was something going on in Chicago, but it's great to have him up here. It's wonderful to see a school like this integrating veterans who have served our country and protected us into their campus culture. And that doesn't happen everywhere around the country, and so I deeply appreciate that. And again, I'd like to thank Ranking Member Levin. He's not just the ranking member of this committee, he's actually a friend of mine. We did the first subcommittee hearing, that was the first one in Congress at all. Was at Mike's district. He represents Oceanside, California. They have the highest population of veterans homelessness in the nation, and it is Mike's #1 priority to help alleviate veterans homelessness, and he makes a very, very strong effort in doing so. And so thank you for coming to my neighborhood. This summer, it's great to have everybody here in the state of Wisconsin. We are the largest producer of cheese, cranberry, you can take notes if you want, cheese, cranberries, horseradish, ginseng, prepared meats, bovine, dairy bovine genetics. I'll tell you what that means later. And of course, mink pelts. Mink pelts. So if anyone is in the market for bovine genetics or mink pelts, please see my staff after the subcommittee hearing. I want to thank you all, especially Mike, for traveling here to the great state of Wisconsin. And we're going to listen to the people from Wisconsin and also from the Veterans Affairs Committee to try to make sure that we can understand what the heck is going on. And before we get rolling, I'm just going to ask everybody that has served this nation in their uniform, please stand up. Holy beans. Thank you. Who's watching the world right now? That's a valid question. I see my commander here, Sir Doug, is here from Monroe County, awesome guy. We have an active duty service member. He is a specialist. I don't know if he wants to be on camera or not, but he's around here somewhere, pretty good dude. I know his dad, who was a Marine. He joined the Army. His dad's mad at him still. But I also want to thank the staff. There's so much work that goes into having these, especially outside of D.C., so I want to thank the majority staff. I want to thank the minority staff for coming out here. It's just amazing. They leave their families to come out here to make sure that you guys understand what's going on. if any of you are having issues with the Veterans Affairs Administration, and I am your congressman, or if Glenn is your congressman, Congressman Grothman, I'm going to introduce him in a second. I want you to, my staff, raise your hand. Hands, okay. If you're having a problem with the Veterans Affairs Administration, everything from getting enrolled into ID.me, which we've got some groups here, or if you're having problems with claims and disabilities and stuff, we're here for you today, but we'll also be here for you tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next, okay? And that's an open invitation. So the format for today's event is set up to allow you guys to see what proceedings in Washington, D.C. look like. It is not a town hall, but again, we've just identified everybody from the staff. If you have issues, please bring them up with them or me following, or with Ranking Member Levin. My top priority as a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee is suicide prevention. And as the chairman of the subcommittee, I've decided to take a novel approach to doing this by ensuring that our service members' transition from the military to civilian life is successful. We have a program called the Transition Assistance Program, or TAP, in order to help with this. And I've chosen to focus on TAP because those 24 months after someone leaves the service is unfortunately when a lot of our veterans decide to commit suicide. And that's because in a blink of eye, they lose their rank and their uniform, they lose their social status, they lose authority, and anywhere from half to all of their paycheck. And it's incredibly stressful. And I decided to use our authority as members of Congress to make the VA take alternative and innovative approaches to preventing veteran suicide, as what they're doing is simply, it's just not working. Congress has provided over $120 billion since 9/11, $16.5 billion in this last fiscal year for veteran suicide prevention, and the veteran suicide rate is increasing. So what the VA is doing is not working. That is an objective fact. So this is another way to approach this problem set. And I say make because, unfortunately, many times the Veterans Affairs Administration drags its feet when it comes to institutional change, and they're not alone. The Department of Defense has not been exceptionally helpful in this matter either. And no department, agency, or individual will ever be given any slack by this subcommittee if they are protecting their institutions at the expense of our veterans. So if you read the papers around here, you know that I can get a bit salty when I'm adamant about an issue, and this is no different. Getting TAP right is an upstream solution that will hopefully mitigate so many of the negative issues that faces our vets today, and potentially help Ranking Member Levin's #1 issue, keeping them off the street to begin with. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at TAP very specifically, and having served for 26 years myself, I know how difficult the transition to being a civilian can be. I introduced the TAP legislation to enhance the TAP program, which is very well intended, but unfortunately it doesn't always meet the mark. A recent GAO study found that more than 4,300 at-risk service members did not receive the warm handover assistance that was needed. 4,300 of our brothers and sisters. And too many of them were falling through the cracks. We will be doing a better job to make sure that there's a concrete plan set from when they take off that uniform to put on a suit, or if they put on a tool belt to get to work. My bill increases the accountability within the DoD and requires more data collection within TAP. My bill will also refine changes the committee made in the past that DoD did not follow. Again, they're not being helpful. No two service members have the same life experiences or career in the military, and we should do all we can to help personalize the transition experience that we provide to each of them to meet their needs, not the department's needs. We're here today to listen. And I'm pleased that we have a great panel of witnesses with us today to talk about the transition from the perspective of Western Wisconsin. Our panelists today don't do the work they do for money or for fame, but to help our veterans. And I want to thank the panelists who are here today, and I look forward to today's discussion. Once again, I thank Ranking Member Levin for attending this field hearing here in the beautiful 3rd District of the state of Wisconsin, and I yield back. I now yield to Ranking Member for his opening remarks.
Well, thank you so much to Chairman Van Orden for having me. Thank you to everyone for your hospitality. I understand if I'm here, I have to cheer for the Packers, not the Vikings. That's what I've been told. Thank you also to my colleague Glenn Grothman. I'm Mike Levin from Southern California. I have the great honor to represent Camp Pendleton. I don't know if we have any Marines here, but it's been my privilege and honor to serve these last 6 years. And, you know, I can tell you, when you get to Congress, you have the opportunity to serve on a variety of different committees. A lot of the committees that you probably see on cable news, people screaming and yelling at each other, not really getting anything done, not being productive. And your Congress member, Derek Van Orden, after his honorable service as a SEAL, decided to continue that service in the House of Representatives and made a choice to be part of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, which is probably the last bastion of, you can call it nonpartisanship, you can call it camaraderie, you can call it, you know, actually trying to get something done for people rather than just point fingers and yell. Sometimes we all point fingers at the VA. Sorry about that. But we do it, at least we do it in a bipartisan way, in a friendly way, most of the time. Look, we're making great progress, and I'm really hopeful that working with the chairman and working with my colleagues, that the staff will continue to work in a very collaborative way as well to get major veterans legislation passed this year. There's no reason we can't do it. We have to prioritize it. We are making great progress as it pertains to veteran homelessness. I was very excited to work with VA, HUD, and Treasury. Recent change, a very big rule for veterans who are on the brink of homelessness or have become homeless. If you get disability compensation, that used to be counted as income towards getting housing assistance. That's no longer the case. This is a very big deal. The PACT Act is another very big deal, and as I was making the turn into La Crosse, I saw a big old billboard for the PACT Act, and wanted to ask the chairman how he pulled that off. I want one of those billboards in Oceanside, California. But I know that we're here to talk about TAP. And I just want to agree with what the chairman said. There is no one-size-fits-all for a transitioning service member. It simply doesn't work. We have to individually tailor TAP for each service member's needs as best we can. I've had the honor to go and participate in the TAP classes at Camp Pendleton. And they throw so much at our transitioning service members all at once in so many acronyms, so many programs. They expect everybody to know everything after, you know, basically feeding it all to them. It's like cramming for an exam, right? So we have some bills that hopefully would help. There's one that I introduced called the Transition Improvement by Estimating Risk, or TIER Act, which would add new screening criteria to better understand the risk factors each transitioning service member faces. It was passed in the House National Defense Authorization Act, so we passed that in a bipartisan way. But then it goes to the Senate, and we know that, I see Senator Baldwin's staff here, so I can't say too many bad things about the Senate, but that's not always where good things get done, so we need help with that. Ranking Member Takano has the Ensuring Veterans Smooth Transition Act that would automatically enroll transitioning veterans into VA health care. I think that's a very good idea. So we've been, working in a bipartisan way, nonpartisan way to address the problems with TAP, and I think your Congress member is spot on in the desire for us to work together and to improve things. We have to. We're going to continue to do it, and I hope we can get some stuff done this year. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will yield back. Go Packers.
Okay, now, he asked me, should you cheer for the Packers or the Vikings? So now you know we're working in a truly bipartisan manner, because he would have opened up with Skoll, and this would have been a...
I'd have said go Rams, but nobody here would have liked that.
They would not.
Throw me out of here.
Yeah. Thank you, Ranking Member Levin. I'll now introduce the witness panel. Our witnesses for the first panel are from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Include Mr. Dwayne Honeycutt, Executive Director of the Milwaukee VA Regional Office, who's accompanied by Mr. Nick Pamprin, Executive Director of Veterans Readiness and Employment, and Ms. Melissa Cohen, Executive Director of Outreach, Transition, and Economics. I'd ask the individuals to please stand and raise their hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. The record will reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Please take your seat. In accordance with the Committee Rule 5 Echo, I ask unanimous consent that Representative Glenn Grothman from the great state of Wisconsin be permitted to participate in today's subcommittee hearing. Hearing no objections, we will proceed. Mr. Honeycutt, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the VA witnesses.
Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Levin, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss transitioning service members' experience with the Department of Veterans Affairs and the services and benefits available to them. Accompanying me today is Melissa Cohen, Executive Director, Outreach, Transition, and Economic Development, and Nick Pamperin, Executive Director, Veteran Readiness and Employment. Within VA, our focus is on increasing transparency, improving collaboration, and keeping veterans at the center of everything we do. The VRE benefit is truly one of the most life-transformative programs for our veterans that VA has. The Milwaukee VRE division, comprised of 3 VRE out-based offices, Eau Claire, Green Bay, and Madison, as well as a Vet Success on Campus program at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. The VRE benefit is truly one of the most life-transformative programs our veterans have. At the Milwaukee VA Regional Office, or RO, we have focused on positive veteran outcomes, communication with our partners about VRE benefits, and outreach. Vocational rehabilitation counselors have already achieved a positive outcome for 166 veterans this fiscal year, of which 141 have received an employment outcome. Of those, 25 have reached maximum rehabilitation gain, which means the veteran participant has reached full employability potential based on the limitations of their disabilities. Potential like Darren, a Marine from Milwaukee, who shared, "Pang, my VRE counselor guided me straight into a vocational field appropriate for my life experience. Her motivation pushed me to do better than I believed I could. I completed my degree and began a new construction safety manager career. My service-connected disability had limited my future earning potential. Pang facilitated a plan for myself and my family to move forward. We cannot be fully successful without the support of our partners. The Milwaukee RO regularly provides training and monthly briefings to county veteran service officers and veteran service organization partners about all aspects of RO operations, including VRE. In addition to assisting veterans who are actually seeking employment, the Milwaukee RO collaborates with federal, state, and county and city partners, and in this fiscal year, the Milwaukee RO assisted veterans with job placement into 20 federal, 3 state, 3 county, and 6 city positions. We also want to ensure we are doing our best to outreach to veterans themselves. The Milwaukee VRE division has taken a proactive role in presenting virtual meetings and events open to veterans throughout the state. The VRE division continues its active involvement with the Department of Workforce Development. In fiscal year 2024, we've had over 1,214 VRE applicants, the most claims the VRE division in Milwaukee has ever processed. The Milwaukee RO maintains a strong outreach presence across the state of Wisconsin, including to transitioning service members. During fiscal year 23, the RO participated in 14 reserve and guard outreach events and 5 thus far in fiscal year 24, assisting veterans in transitioning service members at events such as resource fairs and yellow ribbon programs throughout the state. I want to express my appreciation for your continued support and continue to improve our service to transitioning our nation's veterans, their families, their caregivers, and survivors. VA remains committed to increasing transparency and continued collaboration with you and our stakeholders. Chairman, this concludes my statement. My colleagues and I would be happy to answer any questions to you or any other members of the subcommittee may have. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Ms. Cohen for 5 minutes for her testimony, and the written testimony of Mr. Honeycutt will be entered into the hearing record. Well, I guess we won't be doing that, Ms. Cohen. You guys all got together ahead of time. All right. Well, I will now proceed to questioning. I ask the members and witnesses to please respect the 5-minute rule. Actually, I'm not going to ask you. I'm telling you. I'm shutting the microphone off for 5 minutes. Sorry, that's the senior chief in me. Anyone in the Navy gets that. I now recognize Ranking Member Levin for 5 minutes to question witnesses.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I got a readout of the annual VA military civilian transition summit. And one thing that concerned me was that very little, at least as I understand, very little was discussed about the Veteran Readiness and Employment, or VRE program. This has been an underutilized program for my 5+ years in the Congress, and I've been trying to figure out why that is and how we can improve. I think the role that the program plays with service members transitioning out of the military due to an illness or injury is incredibly important. It provides something called IDES, Integrated Disability Evaluation System, counselors that can help transitioning service members with automatic enrollment. Again, I think that's important if they're being discharged due to illness or injury. So, Mr. Honeycutt, how does the VA ensure awareness of the VRE program and IDES counselors located on military installations?
Thank you for that question. I believe Ms. Cohen would be able to provide a complete response.
Thank you for the question. We make transitioning service members first and foremost aware of VRE in our TAP course. We have Module 4. It's within Getting Career Ready. It's an 80-minute course. Subsequent to that, we provide one-on-one benefit advisor appointments. A new initiative we're starting is that we show a QR code during your TAP course so you can make the appointment right there during TAP so you can talk with a benefit advisor individually. Also, Solid Start. We are going to reach out to veterans 3 times in that first year, and we stand ready to answer VRE-related questions and we have access to what services they have accessed or not, and can share VRE information there. We also have many military lifestyle modules as well, so there are a myriad of avenues we try to make sure we do that. And lastly, too, our outreach efforts. We do include it in our outreach talking points.
Do you think that today VRE is utilized effectively by transitioning service members? Are you satisfied with the rate with which VRE is used?
If I would, I'd defer that to Mr. Pamperin with the VRE program.
It's a great question, sir. What I will tell you is we have seen record growth within VRE, growth that we've never seen historically before. We're up over 45% in applications, over 38% in active participants. We're at over 160,000 veterans within our program. Our program isn't for every veteran. You do have to have that service-connected disability and an employment barrier. But in my 2.5 years in this program, when I first came on board, we were hovering at around 117,000, 120,000. I think as part of outreach, as part of the PACT Act, part of all of the efforts that we've made, we've seen tremendous growth.
How many veterans roughly do you think could avail themselves of VRE if they knew to sign up and were given the adequate information to do so? What's that rough number look like? So it's 160,000 out of how many?
Honestly, sir, I'd have to take that one back for the record because it's a 2-part process. You've got to have the service-connected and character of discharge for eligibility, and then you're seen by a counselor, and they're the ones who make that professional designation. Is there a barrier to your employment and things of that nature? But I'd be happy to.
I'm encouraged to hear the spike, 38% you said, from 100, you said roughly 117,000, 160, but again, the question is out of how many? And what I've heard is that it's a lot. We're talking about several 100,000 potentially that could, take advantage of that program. I guess I'm encouraged to hear about QR code. That's good. But what else can you do differently? And it sounds like things are improving. Obviously, with PACT Act, they're improving. But what else can you do differently? What creative ideas or suggestions do you have?
A few initiatives we have launched. We've collaborated with DOL with our off-base transition training. So we've done.
That was our bill. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. So that's another opportunity where we are messaging services. Also with our Solid Start, that's new too, is we're reaching out where they can schedule the call in advance. And while Solid Start already has a more than 70% connection rate, we're finding that when veterans can schedule that call in advance, they're answering that call on the first instead of the third call. And the length of the conversation we're finding is twice as long. So we continue to work every avenue we can to make sure we have that direct connect.
Chairman's permission, I'll ask one more question. He's tough with this gavel, though. Or we can come back for a second round if you want.
Mike, please go ahead, and we're going to extend your window here.
Thank you, sir.
Of course, it's only because you rooted for the Packers.
The other program I wanted to ask you about is the Vet Success on Campus and the VSOC counselors. There aren't enough of them. Lots of campuses don't have them. I think I read here in the Milwaukee area, or in the region rather, you have one at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, but you don't have any in lots of other areas. So the question is, how does your VRNE office manage what is supposed to be personalized career planning and Chapter 36 counseling requests at all these other campuses when you only have one counselor for this whole region? It's a big region. We're a long way from Milwaukee.
Thank you for that question. The determination of how many VSOCs we have in Wisconsin, unfortunately, is not made by me. It's determined nationally, and I believe Mr. Pamperin could expound on that as to why.
Sure. Be happy to. I know VSOC is requested at a lot of states and universities across the country. We do have a wait list of about 300 universities that have requested them. To your point, first on the Chapter 36 portion, for any veteran who is seeking 36 services that doesn't have a VSOC, we do have our PCPG contract that does provide that counseling service to those veterans on those campus. For schools that have requested, we've unfortunately been constrained by who we're allowed to hire for a VSOC. Right now, due to our record growth, our first priority is to ensure that veterans are seen by a counselor. We do have that legislative requirement of one counselor per 125 veterans. We recently added 342 FTE to the VRNE program this year alone, just to maintain that ratio. The VSOC counselors on campus provide an immense benefit to veterans and to military dependents and spouses on that campus. But 76% of the work that they do is not VRNE related. But we are constrained by, we are required to hire that master's educated counselor that has one of 5 degrees. Makes it incredibly difficult to recruit. And respectfully, my first priority has to be getting those veterans that are in the 31 pipeline, that massive growth that we've seen by a counselor. So that's where our primary focus has been.
And do you know if my last question, if that master's requirement is a statutory requirement, or is that something that you've put in place via regulation?
It is statutory, sir.
So we'll take that back. That's a very helpful feedback.
And I'd love to work with you and the committee on finding some relief so that we can potentially change that barrier that we have, so that we could look to add more or provide, the service to colleges.
Yield back. He's going to get this gavel.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the Honorable Glenn Grothman, my very good friend from the great state of Wisconsin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to thank Congressman Van Orden for having this hearing. Most of Congress is in August because we're not in Washington, is kind of on break. So I was very happy to see that Derek Van Orden was bringing a little bit of Congress here. And his office happens to be next to mine. I can tell you, for a freshman, he already has developed a reputation for kind of, at least on the Republican side of the aisle, one of the 2 or 3 guys who's the go-to guy on veterans issues. And I certainly, not having been in the military myself, I certainly rely a great deal on Congressman Van Orden for how to handle veterans issues. Now, a couple of questions here. I was interested that you just told me that we have restrictions on who can become a counselor. Do you think those restrictions should be removed?
Sir, for clarification, the restrictions on the Vet Success on Campus counselor position?
Yeah.
It is my opinion that those restrictions should be removed so that they can provide the general benefits VA assistance. Opens up the door for us to hire a whole different cadre than a small group of counselors.
Okay. Next question. Congressman Van Orden led off by talking a little bit about the high suicide rate among veterans. Is any of you feel qualified to talk about the number of suicides and why they are going up? I mean, we're certainly putting more and more money into counselors, which I guess proves that sometimes putting money into a problem doesn't solve the problem. You want to give us a shot as to why the number of suicides keeps going up anyway?
Thank you for the question. I couldn't really respond to that. I can tell you I can outline the training our employees have over at least at the regional office level to attempt to impact that in a positive way. We have approximately 850 full-time employees at the Milwaukee regional office. They're required to undergo annual training on suicide prevention, which includes referrals to identifying if they identify it, potential to refer to specialists, suicide crisis hotline in the hospital. Our public-facing employees actually have training twice a year on this issue provided by Melissa's staff, and I'll let Melissa expound on that.
Okay, I'll tell you which direction I'm going. First of all, if the number of suicides is going up, is it greater than for the general population? Say veterans who are in their 30s compared to the population as a whole in their 30s, are veterans committing suicide at a higher rate?
So I can't speak to that specific question. I can tell you a little bit about some of the services within my area of responsibility that may help with the general topic, if that's helpful for you.
Oh, okay, sure. What would you know when a veteran commits suicide? Does it go into some sort of data bank somewhere where we can follow up and see what would have happened there?
I don't have that particular portfolio. I can't answer that question. I can tell you that DoD flags for us when there is a transitioning service member that has certain risk factors, and we will reach out.
Yeah, does anybody have an answer to that question?
I do. Yes. Sorry, I recognize myself. Can we have a colloquy here? Yes, Congressman Grothman, what happens is that the Veterans Affairs Administration catalogs this, but they're not cataloging several different types of deaths of veterans, including drug and alcohol overdoses, and also accidents related to drug and alcohol overdose. So they're mischaracterizing the amount of veterans that are actually committing suicide. We've had multiple hearings about this in Congress, and the issue is that they're not using different types of, they call them evidence-based treatment modalities. So we're going to have, as a matter of fact, I'd like to invite you in September. We're going to have another hearing for non-traditional and non-evidence-based treatment modalities to prevent veteran suicide. That's the long answer to your question. The short answer is yes.
Okay, well, very good. Do you find as the number of people you treat has gone up that the number of suicides has dropped? Or what is the correlation between the number of veterans you touch and the number of disasters we have?
Thank you for that question. I really don't believe that I would be able to answer that question. I think that would be better directed toward our VHA counterparts. Give an example. You know, I said we have in the regional office we have about 850 FTE. Only about 10% of those actually do face-to-face contact with veterans. The rest of them are actually, doing other services, looking at basically deciding claims, different things. They may see flags within a claims file that there's a suicide potential, and they do referrals, or it's not unusual for the National Call Center, which isn't in Milwaukee, to refer a call from a Wisconsin veteran that there's a flag for suicide potential, or and it goes through a protocol referral process to the hospital, to the suicide hotline, up and to include welfare checks. There's a whole a litany of process there. But to your base question, I don't feel I would have the knowledge to answer it.
Okay. I guess my 5 minutes is up.
Gentleman's time has expired, and Glenn, if you want to do a second round, we're here all day.
Okay.
The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Yes, I just referred to myself in the third person. That's what you're supposed to do here in Congress. It's part of the problem. Okay, how many vets do we have here? Again, raise your hand. Okay, keep your hand up if you know what VRNE is. Oh. Okay. That's actually more than I anticipated, but it's about half. So that is an issue. If we have our veterans that don't even understand or know what this program is or that it exists, that's the problem. You know, we got a big surge. We're getting 200 more vets a month because of the PAC Act and all that coming up. But we can't forget about those who have served that are not going to go through TAP. And it's been a consistent issue that I've had with the VA is that we do try to get things done for the now retiring veterans, but we can't forget the people that made it so we're not conducting this hearing in German. You know what I mean? So we need to do a better job of getting this pushed out to the people that look like me and some of the other folks. I want to do a follow-up with Mike's question. And what I've noticed, and I'm sure that Mike was the chairman of this subcommittee in the last Congress, and I'm sure that he's noticed is that the Veterans Affairs Administration does a terrible job of framing a problem. Like, the problem is not framed well. And so, like, what is your current budget now for this? VRE, what is the current budget?
I believe our current budget is, to include expenditures, $1.2 billion.
$1.2 billion-ish, right? Okay. Are you sufficiently funded? I know it's never ask a government bureaucrat if they're sufficiently funded. You can't see behind you, but we can. And everyone was like,
yeah.
Right.
So obviously within our program, and I do want to just quick mention something about suicide. One thing that truly makes VRNE great is veterans in our program, by our longitudinal study, have higher rates of healthcare utilization. Right. But
that's
to
what
your
we're trying
point,
to do. Right.
We need to make sure that we're funded for the staffing levels so that we have counselors to be able to serve veterans.
Okay. Mike asked you a real specific question. How many folks are eligible for this? And you couldn't answer the question, which leads back to my original statement. The Veterans Affairs Administration does a terrible job of framing a problem. You can't tell me how much money you need for X amount of staff persons if you don't know how many staff persons you need because you don't know how many veterans need to be serviced. So you guys approach this, and it's not just you. I'm not bagging on you specifically. You guys approach this thing the wrong way. You try to build this huge model. You don't understand what needs to take place. So until you have an actual survey, until you have a census of the amount of veterans that are currently enrolled, the amount of veterans that can potentially be enrolled, you cannot reasonably ask us for the appropriate amount of money, which it's our job to write the budget to give you the money if you don't have the data points required. So I really hope that when you leave here, because we will follow up, that we get the answer. How many veterans how many veterans can potentially be enrolled in this problem? And it's not that hard. What's the disability rating? 30%? 10? It's 10%. So a 10% rating, right? And then they have to have certain restrictions, right? And you tie that directly to their diagnosis when they come out to get that rating. It's really not that complicated. It just isn't. I used this program to go to law school. I've used every single educational program from tuition assistance to VRNE. I've used the entire spectrum. No one can snow the snowman. And I know you guys are trying to do your best, but we have to do a better job of framing these problems. And we have to do a better job of educating the people sitting behind you, which leads me to this question. What is your interface with our CVSOs, our County Veteran Service Officers? What type of interface do you have with them? Is it a regular meeting? Is it a quarterly thing? Is it bi-monthly? Is it a newsletter? How do you guys interface with the troops on the front line, which are our County Veteran Service Officers?
Thank you so much for that question. I can tell you, in the 10 years that I have been the director of the Milwaukee VA Regional Office, I feel, and I'll let them speak for themselves, I feel I have a very close relationship with our Wisconsin County Veteran Service Officer Association. We have monthly conference calls. We have twice a year they have their convention, which I am involved in speaking to. I'll tell you where we can do better is we usually spend the majority of time updating changes in the PACT Act, changes in benefit entitlement. We haven't spent as much time as I feel we should on VR&E type ancillary benefits, and I will make you that commitment. We have a meeting coming up or a convention coming up in October. I will make that forefront of my interaction with our CVSOs.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt, and we will check my schedule, and if I'm not in DC, I will be there. So with that, my time has expired, and Congressman Grothman, do you want to do a second round of questioning?
Sure.
Okay. We will do a second round of questioning. Ranking Member Levin, do you have any questions you'd like to ask? The chair now recognizes the Honorable Glenn Grothman for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I asked a couple of questions about suicide before, and you know, when our veterans take their own life, I hope that's something we're all realize what a catastrophe it is and what we're doing. And I'm a little concerned maybe we're not getting the appropriate data we can. So I'm going to throw out some questions. Maybe you don't know the answers. We all should know the answers. It's a concern that we don't. But if we don't, Congressman Van Orden is going to have hearings later, and maybe you know the type of things I think Congress is looking for. When you do find suicides, you know percentage-wise, how many have had contact with the VA beforehand?
Thank you for that question. I do not know that answer. What I will do is take back and interface with our VHA counterparts that would know that data, and I can provide it for you.
I guess that's the question is, do we have that data? Does somebody keep track of that?
I am sure that it is in VHA, yes, in the hospital side. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, if someone does commit suicide, do we have data on whether or not they receive treatment for depression, and do we have data as to whether that veteran was on any sort of medication?
Thank you for the question. I believe that data exists. I will make every attempt to get that for you.
I'll tell you the reason I'm asking the question. Sometimes, because of HIPAA requirements, we're told that information we would like to have is not available. And I don't even know whether you have the ability to get that information. If we, for example, find out that a veteran committed suicide, do we have the capability of knowing whether or not that person was on medication or not?
I'm unable to answer that question. I apologize. I really don't. I'm not in a position to be able to speak to that.
Okay. I guess what I'm getting to, if we're going to solve this problem, we have to know certain answers, right? We can't just throw money at the situation, because if you throw money at the situation, you don't solve the problem. And if the treatment they're receiving is ineffective or poor, we've got to know that. So we've got to know, what is done. Was this veteran flagged for potential problems? If after he dies, was he receiving counseling for depression within the VA? Was he receiving counseling for depression outside the VA? And don't you think those are things that we ought to know if we're going to be serious about solving this problem?
I don't disagree with you whatsoever, Congressman.
Okay. And either the other two folks up there have a comment?
I agree with Mr. Honeycutt that VHA does own typically the suicide portfolio. Under my purview, I'll just give you an example. Going back to Solid Start, it's an initiative. When we understand someone has risk factors for suicide, the Department of Defense tells us that. We prioritize calling those veterans in that first year, that first transition year. We will make up to 21 calls. For those 3 times, we'll call 7 times to make sure we make that connection. We've connected with 90,000 people since Solid Start has launched, 90,000 at-risk veterans, to make sure that we connect them with all the resources we can to the crisis line, and to make sure that we offer them support.
I'll give you one more follow-up question on that.
Please.
Of course, they can ask for help through the VA, and I'm sure many people ask for help outside the VA. And I'm sure many people don't ask for any help at all. My guess, though I don't know, is because of HIPAA requirements, we may find it impossible to know whether or not people have received medication for problems or not, or if that medication is effective. Because there are a lot of people out there more skeptical of medication and think maybe it's even counterproductive. Do you think if you can't get the answers to these questions, that we should maybe put a hole in the HIPAA law to allow us to do research as to see how, when a veteran commits suicide, whether they were on antidepressants?
I'm sorry, I can't speak to that specific HIPAA topic.
Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to go over, and
The gentleman
I'll yield.
yields. Before we dismiss you guys, I just want everyone in the audience to understand that Mr. Pamprin, Mr. Honeycutt, and Ms. Cohen are not dodging anything. This is not what you hear on TV. This is not the bureaucratic dodge. But what it does demonstrate is that the Veterans Affairs Administration has built itself on a series of pillars of excellence, or you know them as stovepipes. Because there's part of the VHA, Glenn, that they don't even know this stuff. They don't cross-pollinate. It's because the Veterans Affairs Administration is the second largest bureaucracy on the planet, the first one being our own DOD. So I just want to be very clear with everybody here that these three folks are not dodging anything. They've been very forthcoming. But it is great to demonstrate the fact that these would be great things to know if we do frame the problem and we kind of readjust ourselves. It's not pushing a veteran through to get an education. It's pushing a veteran through to make sure that they're alive to get the education, and that once they get the education, they become a productive member of society as a civilian, just as they're a productive member of society as a member of the military. So I want to thank you guys very much. So are you driving back? Can you hang out for the second panel? You're all good? Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank you all, and you are excused. I hope you will, and you will be sticking around for the second panel. We will be in recess until we get ourselves set up here for the second panel.
Veterans Health Administration has more of the data, but I do agree with you that they may not, the individual doctor may know, and we usually, when there's a suicide on campus, at least, we get a briefing, but that's not very frequent, right?
They ought to know the answer to this stuff, and my guess is they can't. You know, like if somebody kills themselves and they're going to a psychiatrist or psychologist outside of the VA, does anybody know? And I wouldn't be surprised, even if they're receiving counseling through the VA, it's a secret as to whether they're on medication. And the reason I bring it up is there's smart people who think these medications are counterproductive.
Yeah.
And we ought to know that.
Yeah, and I do think his hearing, he's asked for a hearing on alternative therapies and trying to get more faith-based organizations involved and that kind of thing. So I think we're planning to do that when we come back in.
You might have asked the same questions to this.
It'll be green, so it's on, and when you're not speaking, I recommend turning it off.
Take your seats, please. Take your seats, please.
We're missing one of our witnesses. Here.
In our second panel, we have representatives from several local community organizations and student veterans. Mr. Joe Quackenboss, great name, Veteran Service Officer from Trempealeau County, Mr. Dustin Schultz, a Veteran Specialist at Western Tech College, and Ms. Dana Luba, VFW Commander in Wisconsin. And then we also have Ms. Caitlin Brown, student veteran from Western Tech. Morning, ma'am. And Mr. Adrian Moreno, a student veteran at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse. I'd like to welcome you all, and please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Please take your seats. Mr. Quackenboss, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a military veteran, transitioning from active duty to civilian life is a journey filled with both challenges and opportunities, especially when it comes to navigating the academic landscape. My experience transitioning both on and off the school campus has been a mix of triumphs and tribulations, but through it all, I've identified key areas where support from various entities could significantly have enhanced the process for veterans like myself. On campus, one of the biggest hurdles I faced was adjusting to the academic environment. Coming from a structured military setting to the more independent and sometimes overwhelming nature of college classes was a significant shift. Many veterans, myself included, could benefit from tailored orientation programs that not only introduce us to academic resources, but also provide guidance on time management, study skills, and access to tutoring services. Furthermore, the Department of Veteran Affairs plays a crucial role in supporting veterans through educational benefits. While the GI Bill offers valuable assistance, the bureaucracy and delays in processing claims can be very frustrating and discouraging for a lot of veterans. Streamlining the application process and the disbursement of funds process could alleviate a lot of stress and ensure that veterans receive the entitled benefits in a more timely manner. In addition to institutional support, veteran service organizations like the American Legion, the different CVSOs, things like that, they provide invaluable resources for veterans transitioning to civilian lifestyle. These organizations can offer a sense of camaraderie, something that a lot of us left behind, that peer support and access to valuable resources, such as career counseling, networking opportunities, and mental health services. However, that greater collaboration between VSOs and educational facilities, I feel like needs to be enhanced to ensure veterans are aware and connected to the vital resources they have. There is a gap between what even myself as a CVSO knows about the veteran benefits available for education and what there is for veterans when they step foot on campus. Community members also play a very high role in supporting veterans during the transition. Many employers, for instance, can implement veteran hiring initiatives and provide mentorship programs to help veterans navigate within the community. This can help combat the stigma and create a more inclusive environment for reintegration of veterans. In conclusion, the transition from military service to civilian life, particularly within the academic setting, is a complex process that requires support from multiple stakeholders. By improving access to resources, streamlining bureaucratic processes, fostering collaboration between institutions and organizations, and cultivating a supportive community environment, we can enhance the transition for veterans to ensure they strive in post-service endeavors. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. Thank you, Mr. Quackenboss. The written statement of Mr. Quackenboss will be entered into the record. Mr. Schultz, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dustin Schultz. I'm a veteran specialist for Western Technical College, and I've been in my position for 3 years. Prior to this role, I was a veteran service officer and a nonprofit director for a veteran mentorship program where we worked with our local treatment court our Veterans Treatment Court, and justice involved veterans. Lastly, I am an honorably discharged U.S. Army veteran and served overseas during Operation Iraqi Freedom. I'll be providing remarks on the struggles I've witnessed as service members transition from the military. So, current programs like the Transition Assistance Program and Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Program, TAP, are great tools for helping service members transition into education and employment. However, senior leadership are often beyond the stage in their life. Officers already have a college degree, and senior non-commissioned officers often elect to transfer their education benefit to their dependents. Retiring senior leadership may choose not to return to the workforce at all. This is a disconnect between those providing these preventative services and the lower enlisted service members who do not share the same circumstance. And from my experience, lower enlisted service members struggle to transition the most. Veterans report that timing is a problem for the current transitional services. They see these programs as a series of check boxes positioned between them and their release from the military. This causes participation to be rushed. Service members are not honest about what issues they may have to deal with upon their return and do not foresee the challenges ahead of them. Veterans report that these programs are provided at the end of their time in the military and don't allow much time to consider the challenges that they may face. I believe there should be more efforts to start the transitional services much earlier in their careers. Service members are returning to a home where parents, a spouse, or other loved ones have taken on some of their responsibilities in their absence. They may struggle to find their role in the home, leading to relationship issues like divorce and thus compounding emotional, financial, and social hardship. Services should include the families who are critical to successful transition and help prevent those compounding issues. Current service programs seem to lack follow-up after leaving the military. This can leave the veteran feeling discarded and devalued. Coordination with other services and programs is lacking. There's thousands of nonprofit organizations that can help. Services or support that is not specific to veterans are often overlooked. For example, we have veterans that are not aware that they can utilize the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA. I believe a case management approach that is proactively assessing the service members and their families as they transition back into the civilian life would be helpful. Incorporate all effective forms of support such as faith-based programs, peer support, and others that are personalized to the individual. Exit services could be provided by a reintegration counselor similar to that of the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program, Chapter 31, who can assist the service member in connecting to the appropriate resources. Veterans who die by suicide are alarming figures, but they often do not include those that die of accidental death due to things like poor decision-making, recklessness, or unintentional drug overdoses. The service member doesn't know how they'll handle the freedoms of civilian life until they experience it. I feel there should be an additional emphasis on making good decisions and minimizing risky behavior. Lastly, education benefits are a major reason many decide to join the military and often the first endeavor for a service member after they transition. A common issue people report is the financial instability due to prorated housing payments. For instance, if a student begins spring term January 8, the VA will prorate their monthly housing stipend and reduce their housing payment. When the term ends, the payment is again prorated and exclude any of the days at the end of the month that the student is not enrolled. I believe these inconsistent housing payments cause unnecessary hardship to student veterans and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I just want to say something. So I know the three of you pretty well. And I told Mike the first time I ever met Dustin, he gave me the razz, like, what are you doing? I mean, like, hardcore. And I told him what we're doing. And we've talked repeatedly. And I really like the initial adversarial approach that you've taken, and by your testimony here, you actually know what you're talking about, as do you, Mr. Quackenboss, obviously. And then, Ms. Luba, I'd like to let everyone to know that this is my Veterans of Foreign Wars post commander. So thank you for coming today, Commander. We're both members of Legion Post 1530 here in La Crosse, and you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony, Miss Commander.
Thank you. House of Representatives, Committee on Veteran Affairs, and Congressman Van Orden, thank you for the opportunity to let me speak on my behalf regarding my transition from the military to my civilian life. I would first like to explain that I'm an almost 17-year veteran of the world's greatest Air Force. Most of my career has been as an Air National Guard member. I have always worn two hats, my military cover and my civilian cover. They both coexist with one another. My transition to using my educational benefits was a challenge for myself. For most of your entire young life into adulthood, it's controlled by somebody else. They help you to make decisions of your day-to-day. When you join the military, you are shifting it from a family member's job to help you decide to the military making those decisions for you. They set your day for you based on what is best for the mission. When I was given the opportunity post-training, I immediately enrolled into Western Technical College. I had no idea what I was doing. I just kept hearing, this is your opportunity, take it and run with it. And in the ideal world of knowing exactly what you want, that would have worked out perfectly. I spent 2 years using my GI Bill for a career that I don't think I ever wanted. I then proceeded to continue to use it at a 4-year university with the same outcome. It wasn't until my first deployment in 2012 that I had time to sit and think in a once again extremely unstructured environment that I found what my forever idea was. After I returned, I continued to another 4-year school and completed my bachelor's degree. One of the main benefits that the military will use as a recruiting tool is your school is paid for. And that statement is correct if you have the proper guidance to ensure that it is used correctly. Here I sit, an almost 17-year veteran with over $30,000 in student loan debt. I am very grateful for the opportunity to serve my country and do what I am doing, but it would have been nice to have better guidance when I was younger. They always say, once you get older, you will understand. I now fully understand the need for proper assistance when someone is beginning the chapter for their educational benefits. The Veterans of Foreign Wars support the efforts to making veterans transition a smoother process and assisting them in all ways. Veterans have given their worlds to ensure ours, and to be able to help them now should be everyone's goal. I would like to thank you for your time and listening to my experience.
The gentleman yields back. Ms. Brown, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
I would like to thank you all for this opportunity to come here and speak to you guys about my experiences. So my name is Caitlin Brown. I served in the United States Navy from November 2014 to September of 2023. I opted to do the in-person TAPS class on board Naval Station Norfolk, and I personally did not find the week-long class to be beneficial. Day one, when I showed up, on the desks were a orange stack of books containing everything and anything, and we had what basically a lot of us in the Navy love to call death by PowerPoint. Basically, it skimmed over. We did have some guest speakers come in, and they just regurgitated what was on PowerPoints and weren't actually able to answer any of the questions that myself and my fellow military members had. And it's still the same for my friends who are going through TAPS class currently, because I did ask them about that. Sorry, I have a lot of anxiety.
Ms. Brown, you have all the time you need.
And then just going into my transition experience through my last command, which was Mid-Atlantic Regional Maintenance Center in Norfolk, I did not have a lot of help from them. They just kind of do the usual, hey, you're transitioning out, you're separating, we don't really want to deal with you. So they just don't like to help you. I had I do believe, 4-month observe. So a lot of my stuff on the tail end of my contract didn't show up when I actually had to file my separation paperwork. I had to actually beg another E7 to argue my leave chit for me so I can take leave from July to September to finish out my end of contract here at home. And thankfully, he took pity on me and did go argue with the higher ups and the officers and be like, hey, you know, this is her case. She has everything, you know, she did the math. She has all the paperwork to show you that she has these days of leave occurred to take this full amount, even though it doesn't actually reflect in our web pages. And then my next biggest issue was dealing with my household good moves. I had to go through the Sudaf moving company, and about a couple months after I got home, you know, I had a couple months left to actually file all my paperwork, and they changed the entire system. So I didn't have numbers I needed to actually enter in and to try and get paid for stuff they damaged, like my washing machine. It looks like it fell down the highway. It still works somehow, but it looks horrible. You know, they managed to break a TV, a couple other odds and ends, and I'm just like, this is kind of fantastic, but I can't get reimbursed because you guys changed everything. You know, it's just a lot of these service members, you know, myself, I don't know about them, but a lot of our issues stem directly while we are still in the military, trying to actually get out, prepare ourselves, and we're not getting the adequate help or support even from our last commands. You know, I've seen it across every single command I've been at. I first served on U.S. Sisto DDG 55. Those people separating, they had issues there. Then I next served on USS Gerald R. Ford's CBN 78, still had issues. Marmac, they did get a little bit better, but still a lot of issues with these separating service members, and I find it extremely disappointing, especially after myself being a child of an Army veteran and Air Force veteran. I watched both my parents struggle, and now I understand that struggle, and I find it still disappointing, you know, 20 years later, it's still happening. Thank you for your time.
The general lady yields back. Ms. Brown, thank you very much for coming. I'll talk to you later. But Mr. Moreno, the chair now recognizes you for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member 11, and distinguished members of the Subcommittee of Economic Opportunity for allowing me to testify today on the critical issue of the transition experience for veterans like us going on and off campus. My name is Adrian Miguel Marino. I'm a senior here at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. I am the president of the Pre-Law Society here, as well as the Philosophy Club. Outside of that, I've done youth sports coaching as a volunteer for the past 4 or 5 years since I've been here. Before this, I served in the Mississippi National Guard straight out of high school, and after that, the Wisconsin National Guard, and worked for the state of Wisconsin in a civilian capacity for my last 2 or 3 remaining years serving with the Guard. I come before you today as a person of Hispanic descent, a person of color, as well as a veteran to express concerns on behalf of those who are accustomed to being underrepresented. I come before all of you today because our service members face a unique battle transitioning into life as students. It is crucial that we as a society, through our institutions, provide comprehensive support to these veterans to ensure their transition. Transitioning service members, particularly those who are first-generation students like myself, often lack proper academic guidance, despite never even having stepped foot on a college campus. While veterans undoubtedly possess valuable skills such as adaptability and resilience, these alone are not nearly sufficient enough to sustain academic performance. The result can often be discouragement, isolation, and abandonment of educational goals. In my own experience, transitioning from the military service to civilian life and academia was a process of trial and error. I found myself job hopping, trying to find a role that suited my skills and interest. This period was challenging and very often discouraging. The need that I had for structured guidance and support went consistently unmet, and because of that, to say that I struggled immensely would be an understatement. Good and distinguished members of the committee, we need to equip veterans with tools and resources to explore different career paths and understand how their skills can translate into these civilian roles and not just speak about them. I have personally experienced these difficulties and was fortunate enough to meet civilians who provided crucial support, not because I was a veteran, but just because they saw how hard I was working to even stay on campus day in and day out. Unfortunately, many service members do not have the same experience. To address this issue, I propose that we empower our service members with the same level of interest and guidance that the universities here offer first-year students. Specifically, I recommend the introduction of first-year experience courses tailored for veteran students. I also advocate for institutions to provide and promote career advising and skill translation services. These measures can help veterans translate their military skills into academic and civilian settings, fostering a smoother and more successful transition. In support of these proposed solutions, research often shows that the most significant barrier to pursuing a college degree after service is that we are often outliers in the classroom. Everything that we know is from personal endeavors and not from structured guidance. A first-year experience course tailored for veterans could help them navigate their classes and on college campuses, manage their time more effectively, and understand the resources available to them. Such a course could also provide supportive community, either for or comprised of veterans, to prevent many of these feelings of isolation and more importantly, prevent many avoidable failures. In conclusion, we must provide comprehensive support to these veterans transitioning into civilian life and academia. Again, I recommend the introduction of a first-year experience course tailored for veteran students and the promotion of career advising and skill translation services. While the parking spaces are great, a little guidance can go a very long way. And these measures can provide veterans with just that, allowing them to translate their military skills into academic and civilian roles to lead society, not just be a part of it. I come to you today in a very privileged position to talk about something that's very personal to me, my failures, not my victories, because I had the right people that helped me just in time to get through here. And like one of our service members here, despite having the support, I'm in $30,000+ of debt, and I'm not even through graduate school, and I plan on going to law school after this. I'm willing to answer any questions that you have about these recommendations. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify on this important issue.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. Before we get into questions, I just got to tell you, we're different. We are different. Brown, Lubas, Schultz, Quackenboss, Moreno, me, the rest of the screwballs behind you. We're just different. And I think that makes us unique. And we have the ability to tell these younger people that have rolled out of high school and what the world really looks like. And they get to see commitment. And they get to get inspired by your experiences. But nothing's ever going to make you a civilian again. And that there's good and bad with that. But I appreciate it. Well, I'll get to more in question, but thank you for your testimony. All of the witnesses' testimonies will be entered into the official record. I now recognize Ranking Member 11 for 5 minutes. And apparently it's 8 minutes today. I don't know what's happening, guys.
This is unusual for him.
It's crazy.
I want to thank everybody just for their exceptionally good testimony. You know, we do hearings all the time, and everybody was heartfelt and on point, and I'm very grateful for it. I want to thank our CVSOs, really, you know, across the country. San Diego, they're huge, the work that they do. We have a bill, I think you know about this, but with Kathy McMorris-Rogers, Brad Finstad, and myself, called the CVSO Act, to help provide some funds your way. County VSOs are spread thin, and we're very grateful for the work you're doing. Ms. Schultz, I want to thank you for the comments, particularly about junior enlisted service members. So back home, seeing our junior enlisted Marines at Camp Pendleton, what they're dealing with on a daily basis. You know, we tried, in fact, in the National Defense Authorization Act, we got a 20% pay increase for junior enlisted service members. And again, it went to the Senate. I'm looking at you over there. And, you know, unfortunately, we could not get it across the finish line. And there was actually pushback from the administration saying, well, we don't want too much compression between the junior enlisted and everybody else. And, you know, what do I say to my junior enlisted Marines who can barely make ends meet living in a place like San Diego, California? It's just ridiculous. But I very much appreciate your comments. Commander, thank you, and by the way, thank you to VFW, again, everywhere, for all that you're doing. I'm going to come back to you, but I want to start with the students. Both of you spoke so articulately, and you offered some good suggestions. My question for you is, if you were in our shoes and you could make changes, legal changes to the way TAP works, what would you do if you were in our shoes, if you had that opportunity? And I'll start with you, since you're going to law school.
Let's hope I make it, huh?
Oh, you're going to make it. You're going to make it.
So I personally didn't even know about TAP going in. I didn't know, frankly, about anything. It was more just like Ms. Brown says, hey, congrats, you're out, take advantage of the opportunity, beat it. So I personally would, I agree with the death by PowerPoint. The courses just frankly don't do much outside of, I checked that box, let me get out of here, because clearly they want me out of here. On campus for these freshmen, they make them go to mandatory Eagle Fest, student involvement, and even though most of them don't care, some of them do, they get the opportunity to at least see this stuff in front of them. They get to see it in action. They get to see people just as enthused as them about the opportunity to go to school. And if they don't know, it's fine, because most people don't, frankly, know what they want to do for the rest of their lives by the time they're 20 anyways. Mm-hmm. This shouldn't be an obstacle to success. And I feel as though a first-year course that assists these freshmen greatly, and at least ensuring that they're not going way off course while trying to achieve academic goals, would definitely help a lot more. So making it a mandatory thing for first years, I just know that making the Veterans Office on campuses easier to find would be helpful as well. It always feels like a scavenger hunt trying to find wherever a VA is.
Great suggestions. I'll ask you the same question.
Honestly, I think that the TAPS program, it has the correct intentions, but how it manifests is not there. I think instead of it being a week-long course, that it needs to be expanded so you can actually go in depth and make sure that everyone that is going through the program actually understands what is being presented to them. Because, by PowerPoint, they're just like, okay, here, and speed talk for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then they're like, okay, see you, bye. It's not beneficial for everyone. It goes in one ear and completely out the other side. I think it would greatly benefit from being lengthened. By that time, most commands are like, okay, well, we know you're on the out. You need to do this class. We think it should be longer. And they're already preparing to essentially replace you anyways. So
Jody Arrington, who's a good friend from Texas, he's now chairman of the Budget Committee. He and I passed a bill that's now law for this off-base transition pilot. And the idea is to try to do some of what you're saying, but we haven't really seen the results. And frankly, and our friends are still here from VA, it took like 3 years to get the thing going. That sometimes happens too. We'll pass a law, and then we'll say, okay, now now we're good. And then it takes 3 years for them, 2, 3, 4, just to get the thing running. So there are some things happening. I just really want to thank you both. And I'll end with you, Commander. I guess, what are you hearing from your new members, your new transitioning service members, who are, my experience, looking to serve in a different capacity, looking to just figure it out? What are you hearing?
So that's kind of the problem with the VFW now. We're trying to reshift our image. So it used to be a good old boys club, and it was all the men that would go to the bar and hang out with their friends. And really what we're trying to do now is we're trying to shift it. I would say Dustin and I are the youngest members there by 30 years. No offense if any of them are listening to me, but it's true. No, you're there.
I'm right
you're
here.
There. You're there.
I'm literally sitting in front of you.
But the thing is we're trying to shift that. So one thing that I've worked with Dustin is reintegrating our scholarship program. And so we get them out to Viterbo, to TC, and to UWL, and we try to get veterans that are qualified for the VFW with their DD-214s, if they submit a letter, and it can be on any topic, really. We don't really pick it, but we want to know why this would be beneficial. That's how we got Dustin in the VFW, is he did the scholarship, and he's been stuck ever since, and he can't leave now. You know, the other things that we try to do is we try to get out into the community a little bit more. I try to make sure that I try to be at as many things as I can, because I'm younger by 30 years. Somebody will see me there and they'll see a woman that's commander, because the VFW wasn't always the most kind to females, especially. So in the state of Wisconsin, we started a female committee, a female veteran committee, that we're trying to work with all the VFWs to get questions out there of, do you feel welcomed at your VFW? Do you feel like you're heard at your VFW? And then from there, we just keep pushing forward.
Well, I'm out of time, but I commend you for doing that. I encourage you all, think of creative ideas and suggestions for us. I know you have a very receptive member of Congress right here, and we need your ideas. We need your input. And I'm just grateful to you all for your service and for your testimony today. This was outstanding. Thank you.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the Honorable Glenn Grothman from the great state of Wisconsin for 5 minutes.
A couple questions. I have an idea of doing something. I get around to a lot of the employers in my district, particularly manufacturers. They almost routinely tell me that we have too many people getting 4-year degrees out there, and they're not getting a lot of value out of them. Do you think it would be beneficial to give veterans an option when they leave this service? And some people could take the GI Bill, and other people could take, just say a down payment on a house, which would help you in another part of your life, given that I think it's almost universally acknowledged among people that we probably have too many 4-year degrees out there today.
Well, I am not in a position to be buying a house anytime soon. I found that my struggle often was off campus, if this helps. Most of the time when I wasn't able to show up for class or I wasn't able to complete work was that, to be frank, sir, most employers are a little discouraged, and when they see National Guard, even at you're still serving, they're a bit less inclined, at least outwardly, or inwardly, I'm sorry, to hire, because now they have to accommodate for you being out of drill. And I don't say this as a suspicion. I say this because I know and been told this by an employer that picked me up. Like, I kind of was a little nervous about hiring you at first because of this and this and this and that. So I don't know if the issue is a lack of funding, because I always hear about so many programs that there are out there. It's just what do you do when you get out?
Well, you see my point. I mean, right now, we'll say, we don't talk veterans for 1 second. In society as a whole, I again and again hear from employers that they wish they had people get a skill than get a 4-year marketing degree or something. And I thought about that with regard to the veterans. I mean, the GI Bill's been a long time. We should never get rid of the GI Bill. But I wondered if, perhaps there are veterans out there who would be better off with a cash stipend that they can use to help them in life, rather than a 4-year degree, when we, at least according to the employers in my district, we probably have more than enough of. You don't have an opinion on that. Your mind is a blank.
So a benefit to the Air Force is while you're in, you can get your CCAF, your Community College of the Air Force degree. It's a 2-year degree that comes through your training. So I've obtained that. But again, when you're a young airman or a young enlisted, you're told to take those education benefits and go with them. That's the number one perk that the military uses as recruiting, is your college is paid for. So I think trying to change the mindset in a young adult, thinking that, you're pushed towards education, trying to change it more into a skills. I think that's happening. Like TC does that with their 2-year degree, and that's more hands-on based, and it's not a 4-year degree, but that still would be paid for by their GI Bill. It's still beneficial.
Correct. Yes, Ms. Brown?
So I do believe Mr. Van Orden would have a better understanding on how the Navy works, obviously. So the Navy doesn't like to actually give us any type of degrees. We'll maybe get a couple semester credits, and that's about it. Whereas You know, my job in the Navy, I was a hull maintenance technician. I was a welder and plumber. I don't even have, you know, with my almost 9 years of experience, I don't even have a full degree just even for welding or even qualify for a journeyman unless I actually go through and manually log every single hour I have done through a MAPS program. If we could actually change it so those schools would actually give us an actual degree, we would have more technical diplomas and more skilled trades out in the world. But most of us that want to go into jobs that are well-paying, we don't have access to that. And we would have to go through school just to get those qualifications we already have. And a lot of us consider it a complete waste of time. Thank you.
Okay. I'll make one other comment. You talked about a stigma. Usually when I associate veterans looking for a job, it's uniformly a positive, okay? I've hired veterans in my office. I can tell you it jumps off the page if you're a veteran. So I'm not sure I would spend a lot of time talking about a stigma, because if there is a stigma, it's got to be a tiny segment of the population that has a stigma on hiring veterans. I think everybody that I know would consider a person who is a veteran is a positive in hiring them, and that's just a little comment. So I guess I'm over my time. Thank you for giving me an extra 12 seconds.
Does the gentleman yield?
I yield.
The gentleman yields back. Mr. Moreno is referring to being a National Guardsman where you're continuing working. So you are correct? Oh, sorry. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Right, so Glenn, that's what he is talking about. As opposed to being like a straight up veteran, I'm no longer serving. I'm now still in the National Guard, and at some point you're going to have to go do drill and then deploy. So I got you. Check. Mr. Quackenboss, Mr. Honeycutt was here, and he said that you guys have pretty good communications. Is that in fact a true statement from your perspective, sir? It is.
Absolutely a good
Okay.
statement. We monthly, we sit in our meetings together. Not only that, but we also have been stepping into more of the case management as well, where VA will ask community members like CVSOs, what cases do you want to bring forward? What is going on in your area? I sat in on a couple of those even just last week that were absolutely fantastic, just going through the names of veterans who in our community who needed assistance or who had applied for something and there was an issue. Well, how can VA help? Who do we need to get in contact with who would help them? And being able to sit in on those, being a community member, being a CVSO, and being able to touch each of those veterans in those ways and being able to move forward and say, hey, we were able to get in touch with VA. VA is going to reach out to you. That's the best part.
Okay, why that's so important is Trempealeau County is on the opposite side of the state of Milwaukee. So to bring that up to you, Mike, that is an excellent thing to hear. Mr. Schultz, you nailed it. There's a massive disparity between the officer and enlisted ranks. There simply are. Mike said this. It was actually, I think, 23% increase that we had written into our bill from the House. Then the current administration didn't want to do that, which to me is fantastically stupid. And then it didn't get through the Senate. Sorry if we could talk to Tammy about that. I appreciate that. But so right now, how many quick trips are within a mile radius here? The answer is 50, right? So you can go to a quick trip right now as a 17-year-old. Sign up for a quick trip. You're going to get paid more. Your benefits are going to be equal, and you don't have to leave your family, and no one's shooting at you unless you're getting robbed. Okay? And compare that to a junior enlisted person in the military, and it's not right. So I was part of a task force. We're trying to fix this. That's where it came out of. We've got a lot of really very serious veterans who have walked this walk in Congress, or like Mr. Garcia from California 25. He was an officer, but he gets it because he's connected with his enlisted folks, and he sees that we struggled. My wife and I were using WIC. You guys know what that is? Women, infants, and children, to buy milk for our kids when I'm getting shot at overseas fighting Al-Qaeda. So that's not okay. So thank you for pointing that out. Ms. Luba, we're working on it. Oh, sorry, Commander. We want people to have a better understanding of what they're trying to enter into in a second career. And the problem is the Department of Defense. I was referencing that directly in my opening statement. The Department of Defense is the problem. And they think that if we set up a smooth transition and a good off-ramp for active duty military people, that people are going to get out of the military. And that's been proven wrong by my fellow Navy SEALs. Naval Special Warfare started this transition assistance, the TAP program, and it's a 24-month thing that starts 2 years before you're getting out of the service to address Ms. Brown's concern. And there was no increase of Navy SEALs getting out of the military because they had an understanding of what they're going to do when they got out. So that is a fallacy, and it's wrong. And I've spoken directly to the Secretary via letter. I'll say it again right now. If you're Lloyd Austin, Secretary Austin, if you're listening, your people are not doing what's right for our service members, because eventually they're going to become veterans. And I was looking into the camera on purpose. There you are. Ms. Brown, you showed incredible courage today. And I see how stressful this is to get up here, and I'm telling you, the old crusty, salty senior chief that probably uses inappropriate language too often is telling you, I'm proud of you. But there's no way in hell you should ever have to go to a chief outside your division to advocate for you. And that's the problem I'm talking about. Okay, I was a command career counselor for 2 different commands, and I told every one of my guys, all my frogmen, if you're thinking about getting out of the military, I'm the only person you're going to tell. Don't tell anybody. And I'd help set them up, get everything aligned for them. Guess what? I had a 100% retention rate because I showed those people I actually cared about them wearing the uniform and not. So we have to get over this culture of you're a piece of trash when you no longer be in the service. There's a man sitting behind you who was a National Guardsman for the Minnesota National Guard that when he got out, they just threw him out like he's garbage. Served his country and his unit. He's no longer welcome. Doors closed. Am I paraphrasing? That's accurate, sir? Okay, so check me out. That's not okay. You go into my office, all the service seals are on the wall. You know what's the far right there? You know what that is? It's a Wisconsin National Guard. I hold them at the same level of reverence that I do all of our active duty servicemen and women. There's 50 Pennsylvania National Guardsmen that are directly responsible for me being alive today because they protected me and my platoon in Iraq. I know half the room wish they weren't there, but the other half does. So our National Guardsmen and women are doing the job, and we have introduced bills together to make sure that we get parity in educational benefits and many things across the board because we respect your service tremendously. So I'm sorry that you're treated that way, sir, in Minnesota. At least you're now on the right side of the river. That's all I'm going to say. Mr. Moreno, it's an excellent idea, but it's too late. By the time a student enrolls in a college, it's too late, because you're going to run into what the commander's talking about here. They're going to get involved in a program. They're going to think it's what they want to do. They're going to get 6 months or a year into it, and then they've blown a year of their GI Bill. That's why the Department of Defense has to get off their ass and realize that we're here for the full life cycle of the sailor, Marine, soldier, airman. That's from the time you join the military to the time you're done and past that. That's a life cycle. So what I'd like to do is incorporate, because what you're talking about is very smart, but take the actual programs from the universities that our young servicemen and women are going to go to and inject that into the cycle when they're still active duty. Because then by the time they show up, they're going to go through the rest of the matriculation process at the college, but they have an 80% chance of getting the right degree to begin with. And here is the problem that we're working at. Ms. Brown, this speaks directly to you. Because that has not changed since I was in the Navy. And, you know, ships were made of wood and men were steel. Now it's an old Navy joke because I'm an old Navy guy. Hasn't changed, and this is why. Naval officers and Army officers, our officer corps is not held accountable. They're not held accountable for their troops or their sailors or their airmen for not going through these programs. They're not held accountable for the follow-on. They're just not. So I have proposed, and I've spoken to some of my other Democrat colleagues, making this a block on a fit rep. That's what they call it in the Navy. It's OER in the Army. And it specifically states how many of their troops have not gone through this program. And they get docked, and they don't get promoted. And that's the only way this is going to change, is holding our officer corps accountable for not taking care of their sailors. That's it. That's the real answer. Skip to the end. So, Mr. Grothman, do you have any more questions you'd like to ask?
No, I just say you put together a great.
Well, here, I'll get to you then. I just want to make sure you didn't want to do a second panel. And we'll do closing statements.
Okay, no.
Do you have any more? Okay, with that, I would like to recognize the ranking member for any closing statement he would like to make.
Well, I want to thank the chairman for his leadership on our committee this Congress. And as has been said, for a freshman, he knows an awful lot, and he's very dedicated and passionate about serving you all. And I hope you know that. I can tell you it's my great honor to get to serve on this committee as well. When I got to Congress, I didn't know it would be the most rewarding work that I did, but it is by a lot. We actually, despite maybe some of the delays, we actually see the fruit of our labor a lot quicker and a lot more directly than you see, again, on virtually any other committee in the Congress. And I hope it'll always stay that way. You know, we have an opportunity here. We're getting very close to the election. It's silly season, right, in political speak. And it gets harder and harder to get things done in Washington before an election. But whether it's before the election or before the end of the year, in what they call the lame duck session, we have, I believe, a moral obligation to get a veterans package done for this Congress. And I've got a couple of bills in there, including the CVSO Act, including the GROW Act, which is a bill that will hopefully get lots and lots of veterans employed at the Department of Interior in conservation jobs across the country. That's something that's very important to me as well. But we've got to get it done. We've got to work together. And I thank the chairman and I thank Representative Grothman for their work in this regard. You'll get back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the Honorable Glenn Grothman for any closing statement he may wish to make.
I'd just like you to thank you for putting together these great panels. I think we learned a lot today. I think we learned there's some more questions we want to have answered in the future, particularly with regard to the cause or what we can do about suicide. But, you know, one more time, I learned a little bit more about the veteran situation from Congressman Van Orden. And again, I'd like to thank all you folks for taking time out of your busy days to come down here and educate us a little bit.
The gentleman yields back. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I got to tell you, I hope everybody noticed a couple things that happened today that you're never going to see in the press. You're never going to see members of the veterans community writ large openly praising the Veterans Affairs Administration. You just don't see that. They're the easiest can to kick around. And I want you to understand that there are a tremendous amount of professionals at the VA that are trying very, very hard to get things done. And you saw that witnessed today, which is fantastic. From the healthcare side of the VA, I get all my healthcare through the VA, including these awesome glasses. I get seen here in La Crosse and at Toma, and I'm very, very proud of them. Is anybody here from the health side today? Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, hey, what's up? So listen, I am very, very proud of them. And people need to understand that there are, the Veterans Administration, there's a lot of people that are trying to do what's best. Unfortunately, the higher you get up, the more convoluted it gets, and people start protecting institutional equities and not the veterans. That does not happen here in La Crosse. And it doesn't happen over in Toma either, for whatever you've heard. And I just want to be crystal clear that I'm exceptionally proud of our people that work at the VA, in particular in the healthcare side. Because, I mean, look at me, spring chicken right here. You guys are a key component, especially our VSOs and our CVSOs. So we have to be able to sit across the table, and if that has to be at the bar across the street, or if it's in an office in a county building, and look each other in the eye, because then we're going to know if something's okay or something's wrong. Every single person here that has managed a single troop can look at a sailor or a soldier, an airman or Marine in the eye for a millisecond and go, hey, dude or gal, sit down. Get a cup of coffee and tell me what's going on. So without a direct connection from the VFW, from the American Legion, Disabled Veterans of America, all these groups, and without our CVSOs, we're going to keep having a problem with our veterans committing suicide because they're disconnected. So I want you to walk away, and I kind of thought we were going to yell at people because I'm good at that. I want you to walk away today understanding that there are people in the federal government that are trying to help. And I also want you to walk away with the complete understanding that we know that we fall short a lot. And we recognize that. But with that said, I want to thank Ranking Member Levin for coming out from the great state of California. I want to thank Congressman Grothman from coming out from the even greater state of Wisconsin. And for everybody here that has come out. And with that, sorry, I have to say some more magic words. Here they are. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned.